Greetings, loved ones. Today we're going to ask the question, can you recover from trauma? Please help us get these messages out, subscribe to our channel, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, hit that like button and the notification bell so you don't miss a single episode, and please share these messages with others because you never know, you could just save a life. There are several stages of recovery after trauma, and every survivor's journey to healing is different and shouldn't be rushed. For those who have lived through the trauma of an abusive or violent partner, they may expect an instant sense of relief once they've escaped, a calming peace after they shut the door on that chapter of their lives. Instead, what they can really experience is sometimes completely different. Instead of tranquility, they may feel anxious. Instead of joy, they may feel guilt, or they may feel nothing at all. This, as therapists, is normal. There are emotions that come with the stages of recovery after trauma. Relationship therapist Amy Picarts, I believe it's Amy, she says that trauma recovery looks different for everyone. Sometimes clients feel like there's something wrong with them, or that they are failing at recovery because they read books and can't relate to how others have coped. A French pioneering psychologist, Pierre Janet, outlined what many believe is the first framework for trauma recovery in the late 1800s. In 1992, psychologist Judith Herman transformed Janet's initial ideas into a three-stage approach to understanding trauma. The three stages might look like this. Phase 1 is safety and stabilization. Trauma survivors tend to feel unsafe in their bodies and in relationships with others. They may struggle with regulating their everyday emotions, which they may not associate directly with the trauma, and it may take months or even years to regain a sense of safety. Phase 2 is the remembrance and mourning. This is when survivors may begin to process the trauma, assigning words and emotions to it to help make meaning of it. This process is best undertaken with a trained counselor or therapist. It's important to mourn the losses associated with the trauma and to give oneself space to grieve and express emotions. Phase 3 is reconnection and integration. And here, survivors recognize the impact of the victimization they've experienced, yet they begin to believe that trauma is no longer a defining principle in their lives. They begin to redefine themselves in the context of meaningful relationships, create a new sense of self, and create a new future. In some instances, they may find a mission through which they can heal and grow, such as mentoring or becoming an advocate of others. Relationship therapist Amy Picarts says that many domestic violence survivors she counsels come in emotionally beaten down with overwhelming amounts of self-blame and confusion about who is at fault in the relationship. And she tells us that, this is what she says. She says, I think frustration more accurately describes what they are feeling. In my most depressed client, she says, there is a deep sense of resignation. This is my life. I don't know how I ended up here, but I did, etc. Survivors are often conditioned to be passive by their abusers. Showing anger could literally put their life at risk. So to have anger over what happened isn't a natural emotion for many survivors. Picard says that reclaiming their voice and learning how to not be afraid of their emotions is a significant part of her work with survivors. And we need to remember, recovery takes time. Unfortunately, healing from trauma, no matter if the abuse lasted a few months or a few decades, it is not an overnight process. In fact, getting over it may never be a part of a survivor's recovery. Abuse can have a lifelong impact, but the severity of its effects can be lessened by getting help. Pickert says, I have many clients tell me in our first session, I just want to be over this and move on as fast as possible. Well, I understand recovery just doesn't work that way. If a survivor tries to rush the recovery process and not really do the work, so to speak, They may end up continuing to deal with issues from the trauma, such as anxiety, depression, and an increased risk of being a target for another abuser again among them. Picard says that there can be a lot of self-judgment about how long the process of recovery takes, so she works on validating every survivor's unique experience. She says, what's amazing to witness is that ultimately everyone truly does have what they need inside of them to recover. It just may take a bit of help to get there. With 62% of U.S. adults having at least one adverse childhood experience and 25% of U.S. adults having 3 or more, the question is not whether you will encounter a victim of violence. The question before God is, what will you do when you do encounter them? You could be the person who saves a life. You are called. We are all called to be champions for justice. And those who suffer need to know that those who love them and those who don't even know them will reach out and give them the help they need before it's too late. Please help us get these messages out. Subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit the like button and the notification bell, and please share these messages with others. You could save a life. If you're a victim of violence, please listen to me. I want you to know that you are valued, you are loved, you are intelligent, and you are worthy. God does not want you to suffer violence. He wants you to live free from violence in peace and tranquility. There is a way out. It is not your fault, and abuse is not love. And most of all, I want you to know that you are not alone. If you're a victim of violence, reach out to someone today. If you find yourself in a dangerous situation, call 911 for help. If you know of a senior or a child suffering from violence, tell the authorities. In our next episode, we're going to talk about recovery after a controlling relationship. Until then, God bless you.